National Training and Development Curriculum for Foster and Adoptive Parents. Sequential Engagement. Bruce Perry, MD, PhD, Child Trauma Academy, Senior Fellow.
One of the most important things about the way the brain's organized is this sequential processing quality. And we know the brain develops sequentially, and we know that incoming information from the outside world, its first stop when it's being processed by the brain is low, and then it will be processed by the middle part of the brain and then by the top part of the brain. So there's a sequence of processing. And one of the things that we know about that sequence is that frequently as adults, when we're trying to communicate with other people, we forget that in order for us to get to that person's cortex, we have to go through the lower and dumber parts of the brain.
Those lower parts of the brain are shown as the brainstem at the lowest, then diencephalon, then limbic, and then finally the cortex at the top.
And if those parts of the brain are all stirred up, you're not going to get an efficient message through to the cortex. And so one of the things that we know that allows you to be really, really efficient in getting information to the cortex is if you're connected relationally. If you are able to have a person trust you and they're present and engaged with you relationally, you're going to be much more likely to efficiently communicate what we call cognitive information. Now, the problem is it's very hard to connect with somebody if they're not regulated. And if they're all stirred up and frustrated and angry, and your ability to be present and to be calmly, socially engage them is impaired. So what we've learned is that there's an effective sequence of engagement. That first, the individual you want to communicate with has to be regulated at least to a certain degree. And once they're regulated, then you can effectively connect with them. And then once you connect with them, then you can persuade them, then you can reason with them. But one of the things that we have realized is that very often people violate what we call this sequence of engagement.
That sequence of engagement is first regulate, then relate, and then reason.
So they take a very, very, very dysregulated child and they try to talk to them, try to make them, be better. So like pay attention or calm down. And one of the things that we know is that probably the most dysregulating two words in the English language are calm down. When you tell somebody to calm down, it almost always escalates them. And so we do this all the time. As parents, as coaches, as teachers, as therapists, we violate this sequence of engagement. And what is going to be really, really useful is to develop the skill to regulate yourself. And you need to regulate yourself because human beings are contagious. And we'll talk later about sort of the social interactions and the neurobiology of social connection. But one of the most powerful things about that is that there are parts of our brain that are monitoring the social environment and the emotional environment. And if we are all stirred up, there's no way that we as a dysregulated adult can calm down a dysregulated child. And that's because of the contagion of the human being and the brain's capacity to basically mirror the emotions of others around them. So the real sequence of engagement is to calm yourself down, regulate yourself, and then help the child regulate, then connect with the child, and then reason with them. And so one of the most effective things, we find is that instead of stepping forward and raising your voice and wagging your finger and saying, do what I say, How many times have I told you in other forms of cognitive interaction, you do things like step back, calmly suggest, let's take a walk. You walk side by side, and then once there's a certain degree of regulation and you feel like you're connected, then you're able to effectively communicate with the child. But again, this is something that it takes practice. Even though I've known this for 30 years, I think I probably violate that sequence of engagement 5 or 6 times a day, both with my own kids and with my colleagues. It's an awareness that's very helpful, but it's also an awareness that requires practice to act on.
For more information, visit ntdcportal.org. This video was funded by the Children's Bureau, Administration on Children, Youth, and Families, Administration for Children and Families, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, under grant number 90CO1134. The contents of this video are solely the responsibility of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of the Children's Bureau.